Today, we'll attempt a feat once thought impossible, overcoming high-interest credit card debt. It requires merely one thing, a SoFi personal loan. With it, you could save big on interest charges by consolidating into one low fixed-rate monthly payment. Defy high-interest debt with a SoFi personal loan. Visit SoFi.com/stunt to learn more. Loans originated by SoFi Bank N.A., member FDIC. Terms and conditions apply. NMLS 696891.
You're listening to the Sisters-in-Laws podcast, a faith-based podcast that spotlights Black women who replace silence with storytelling around pregnancy and infant loss and infertility. Black women experience miscarriage and stillbirth 4 to 5 times more likely than white women, according to the NIH and CDC. Whether you've experienced a miscarriage, infant loss, stillbirth, are trying to conceive, or have an infertility diagnosis, you will learn about resources and strategies to heal, gain clarity, peace, hope, and find an empowering path forward after loss. I'm your host, Erica M. McAfee, and you will hear me interview sisters-in-laws who have healed from such a painful and traumatic experience by sharing their testimonies and stories to inspire and help others turn their pain into their purpose. Now let's get started.
All right. Well, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you so much, Erica. I've been following you for years, and it's really good to be on with you and getting to see you in person, I guess, virtually, and getting to chat with you. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to have you. So I would love for you to just share with our listeners a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Okay. So my name is Jamala Arland, and I describe myself, I think now based on my experiences, and the key experiences that define me have been my experiences with endometriosis, meeting my husband, who is the perfect husband for me, our journey through IVF, congenital heart defect, which was a condition that our son had, and then also child loss. So I describe myself as an endometriosis survivor, a wife to the best husband, an IVF warrior, congenital heart defect advocate, and a grieving mother.
Love that. So I would love for you to just take us back on that journey to motherhood through infertility, through loss. Share with us your story.
Yeah. I often think about, where to start with this story, especially with endometriosis. That probably goes back a bit to my teenage years, but I was diagnosed with endometriosis when I was 24. And during that journey, I lost my right ovary and right fallopian tube. And literally during that time in my early 20s, where you're just kind of, just starting to learn yourself and find yourself, I literally felt off balance and out of symmetry with my body and with what I was experiencing there. And I consider that one of the first defining moments for me as an adult woman. And it was challenging and shaking and also embarrassing. I felt very embarrassed about this diagnosis and losing half of my reproductive organs and not feeling like a full woman. On top of that shame that I was experiencing in myself, I was also learning, and I learned during that experience that it was not okay to say the things that I was feeling, because I was told that, everything was going to work out. You're young, you have time. And that also that I didn't have enough faith. If I believed in God and my faith was strong enough, then everything would be okay. And I wouldn't be having these feelings of doubt and shame. And really, I felt that I was not believed in the things that I was experiencing. And that really silenced me. And I stopped talking about what I was experiencing at that time. I navigated the rest of my 20s settling in relationships, I call it. I did not feel whole within myself, so I did not demand or expect wholeness from relationships. And then I met my husband in my early 30s, and I would describe him as the kindest person that I know. That there are things that I believe, and one of the things that I believe the most is that he was sent for me for the journey that we have been on together in our relationship and with our family. And we knew we wanted children, and by the end of our first year of marriage, we were on the fast track to IVF. No medicated intercourse cycles, no Clomid cycles, no IUIs, just go straight to IVF. And we did 6 IVF cycles with 2 clinics. I had another surgery for fibroids, and where my left fallopian tube was removed, which pretty much confirmed that IVF was the only way for us to to have children biologically. We did 3 unsuccessful embryo transfers. We had counseling with a therapist who specialized in fertility just to deal with the grief and the losses. There were a lot of tears, a lot of crying, and also a lot of platitudes and invalidations of the grief and loss that goes along with infertility. And countless suggestions, really uneducated suggestions from people who didn't necessarily understand, and we were supposed to receive those graciously and just accept that unsolicited advice. And 3.5 years we were waiting and hoping and living our lives on pause, and ultimately it felt as though we were spinning in place in our lives and in our marriage, because everything was planning around the next IVF cycle or the next transfer, the next treatment or thing that we were going to do. And I spent that time really feeling that we were just like on a hamster wheel of being in place. So on top of the shame of endometriosis, sat this new shame of infertility. And I had already learned that it was not okay to say the things that I was feeling. So in that experience, I silenced myself and I didn't talk about what we were experiencing. In June 2019, we did a transfer with the last embryo that we had, and it really felt different. That transfer felt different. I felt that this was going to be it. This was our baby. And, that was confirmed on July 5th. I was confirmed that I was pregnant on July 5th, 2019. And I started writing to my son on July 7th of 2019, 2 days after that confirmation of that pregnancy. I just had this feeling that he was going to be. I felt that I knew him in a way that I could not explain. And I also felt that I knew it was a boy, even though we didn't have that confirmed until September. I just knew. And I just really had this moment, this is it. And we had finally reached the mountaintop. And, I don't know if you've ever had this feeling, Erica, where you're just waiting, you just feel as though you've arrived, you're there on the mountaintop, and then suddenly the clouds part and you realize, no, this is not the mountaintop. This is actually a valley for the next mountain. And you just kind of realize that there's just more laying ahead for you to traverse. And we had traversed endometriosis and infertility, and finally we were pregnant. And I just had this feeling of waiting for that next shoe to drop, in a way. And the first part of my pregnancy, I was very connected to my son and connected to him, and the relationship that I was building with him and with my husband. But it felt very, very tenuous, like it was very easy for it to break, and it was very fragile what we were holding on to. And finally, at 19 and a half weeks, we announced our pregnancy publicly on social media, to fanfare of how much we deserve this, and how deserving we were for this gift. And a week later, the clouds parted and that next mountain revealed itself in our anatomy scan. I remember it very clearly, and all the dates kind of stick in your mind when you kind of go through a traumatic experience. It was October 24th. We had our anatomy scan at 20 weeks, and our son was diagnosed with a congenital heart defect. And during that experience, like I had never heard of congenital heart defects before, and learning that it's the most common birth defect, and also the most common cause of infant death from a birth defect. And then I was just suddenly hit with this reality that our son could die. And that was just something that, even being in the infertility community for a while, I was very aware that children die, but suddenly having this awareness that my child could die, it's a very different feeling than just wasn't general anymore. It was me, it was my son. And I just couldn't reconcile the diagnosis with this vibrant, happy, kicking baby boy inside of me. Like, he was just the happiest little boy. So on top of the shame of infertility and endometriosis, I had this fear that, if I talked about what was going on with this congenital heart defect, that people would blame me. It was my fault that this had happened to him, that I didn't deserve him after all, that I did all these things to bring him here, and I was not deserving. And that feeling very much reinforced what I had learned in my endometriosis and infertility journey, that it was not okay to say the things that I was feeling. And even more so, to say, I think my son is going to die, is not something that a mother can actually verbalize. Sometimes it goes through your head when you're having an experience, but to actually say that thing out loud, it's just a whole nother level of silencing that I had never experienced before in that experience of my son's diagnosis. We decided to name him Jasper. And Jasper means bringer of treasures. It's derived from one of the wise men who had brought Jesus frankincense. And Jasper very much is our greatest treasure. When I was pregnant, I read him a lot of stories. And his favorite was when I read him, and I still remember kind of the reaction that I would get from him when I read different stories. I read him the story about, when Jesus said, bring the little children onto him. And he was just so happy and excited when I told him that story about Jesus and how Jesus loved little children. And I knew in that moment that he knew Jesus and that he was really excited about Jesus. He was born at 34 weeks and 3 days on February 5th, 2020, and he died in my arms on February 6th, 2020. That was the hardest 30 hours that I've ever experienced. And that moment in that time of holding him and watching him die, I think was the hardest thing that I've ever been through and seen. People talk about, somebody had a peaceful death. And I really don't understand that because, in my experience there, holding him, watching him die, it did not feel peaceful to me. I do hope that he felt peace and knew love in that moment. And, when I think back on it, I think about things like, wishing very much that I could have saved him from the pain that he experienced in his short life. But I also have the realization now that he lived a whole life. And, he didn't have all the his life experience didn't have all the aspects that come from living a long life, but he had all the emotions of living a whole life. And I recently was reading Glennon Doyle's Untamed. And in that book, she says, the truest, most beautiful life never promised to be an easy one. And he had a true and beautiful life. And, that's something that I think about, like all the experiences that he had. And as much as a mother, wishes she can take pain from her child, that is what makes life whole. And I know that in those 30 hours, he had a lot of experiences. He experienced love. I'm sure there were points where he was scared. But I the thing that I just hope most is that he just knew that his dad and I, that we were there and that we loved him very much, and we love him very much still. And, Jasper had a congenital heart defect that was considered operable. I remember the doctors saying, don't worry, we can fix this. And, thinking back now of what does that mean to fix something? And, and even just thinking about that, like the idea of what he would have experienced had he lived and had his CHD surgery. Kids who have congenital heart defects deal with so much developmental delays, other birth defects, just the implications and impacts from multiple surgeries. And we later found out that Jasper had a genetic mutation that's quite rare, that ultimately that was the cause of his death, and his lungs were very undeveloped, and that's why he did not survive. I often romanticize what life might have been like, had he lived, and parenting a medically fragile child. And that experience in itself, I imagine is not easy. And sometimes I think too, when people say things very nobly when they're pregnant, when someone asks, do you want a boy or a girl? And they say, I want a healthy baby. As long as the baby's healthy, I don't care. And that's a very noble thing to say. I don't care as long as they're healthy. And I just say to myself, like, I just want him. Like, I just want him. Like, however he was going to be, however he was, whoever he was, I just want him. And I just miss my son. So that's just like one thing that I think about often. So that's just like, that's just our story.
No, obviously I can relate to you with
I know you
that
can.
sentiment of wanting a healthy baby. And I always question people back when they say that, because I'm like, well, what if the baby was not healthy?
Exactly.
You would still love them the same. You would still find things about them that you can brag about and show and understand and try to normalize. So my sentiments with you on that, and understanding all that you have gone through to journey to this point with endometriosis, going through infertility, all those IVF treatments, losing, part of your reproductive health system. And then, going to the hospital and leaving empty-handed,
Yep.
No parent should ever have to travel through that journey. But I thank you for your bravery, for sharing your experience. I think that a lot of the listeners and those who are watching will definitely understand what that feels like, especially those who have gone through a NICU experience with a baby who passes away in the NICU,
Yeah.
and are given a prognosis that's not, doesn't look good even in utero. So I would love for you to take us on what happened after he passed away. Were you all given the opportunity to take some tubes out of him, take him off of life support, and actually hold and spend time with him after he passed away? Did you have a memorial service for him? How was those first, few moments in those first weeks after he passed away?
Yeah. Um, yeah. Thank you for sharing that and asking, because it's really interesting because people don't ask those questions. People, I think, sometimes forget that after your baby dies, like there's all the normal things that happen when an adult dies. I think people forget all the things that you're experiencing on top of all the postpartum um, things that you're going through. And like you said too, like you were talking about just medically fragile children and normalizing that experience of parenthood and pride, that also translates to bereaved parenthood. I still have a lot of experiences and stories and memories of my son that I'm very proud of, to talk about and to share, but it's often met with like, this really awkward silence of like, we can only talk about certain children, the ones that are healthy and the ones that are alive. We can't talk about sick and dead children, which is just very bizarre in our society. But after Jasper died, we did get to hold him, and our doctors and nurses were so very compassionate. In that moment, we had a chaplain come in, and she said prayers for him, and that was one of those moments where like in the fog of the moment, I wish that we had thought to record what she said, because she said the most beautiful prayers. It was like she looked into my heart and she knew exactly the words that were there, of what I was praying for him, for his next life and for that journey. The nurse, we had a nurse who had recorded his heartbeat when I was holding him. So I have a little teddy bear that has his heartbeat in it. And the crazy thing with it is that when they did the recording, they put it in a teddy bear, and the nurse picked the teddy bear, and we didn't realize that she was going to do that. And when we came in to see him later on, there was this little elephant sitting on his shelf, and we were like, "What is that?" And she's like, "Oh, we put his heartbeat in this little elephant." And I was like, "Do you guys only have elephants?" Like, "No, we have a whole closet full of zoo animals." And of all the animals for them to pick, elephants, that we were decorating his nursery with elephants. So that was his animal. So it just felt as though like, she was guided to pick the animal that was perfect for him and perfect for us. After he passed away, I had a C-section. So, I was still very limited in my mobility, and I had postpartum preeclampsia. So I was on a magnesium drip, which just creates a whole mind fog. So a lot of my memories just are very foggy. But I was also, physically couldn't do a lot. My husband, I watched my husband bathe him. So he got to bathe him, and I took some pictures of that. And that's something that was really special, to really watch my husband with his son and have those moments as a father and doing the things that I know that he would have wanted to do with his son. They took pictures of him and just gave us like, just a really nice box with his prints and his handprints and footprints. And, those are things that we treasure very much. We have a keepsake box for him that continues to grow even in death. Like there are more and more things that we find that we are just drawn to, that tell us that, hey, Jasper's showing us that, and that's something that's for him. So we were able to do those things. After we went back to our room, I took a nap, and then I actually realized that I hadn't kissed him. And it was just this really I was awoken to this feeling like I need to go back and spend more time with him. I need to hold him again. I need to kiss him. And that was not something that I necessarily knew that I could do or that I was supposed to do, but I was very drawn to doing it. And we went back and we held him again. And by that time, the nurse had cleaned him up a little bit. All the machines in his room had been moved. And it was just very quiet and very peaceful. And, the experience of his death was traumatic, but that going back to his room after and spending that time with him, I'm so glad that I did that, because it actually kind of created this other image in my head of the death experience, honestly. And he just looked so peaceful and just calm lying in his bed. And, I got to hold him again and kiss him. And my husband actually held him too a little bit longer. And we just got to spend more time with him. So the nurses and doctors at our hospital were so very compassionate and really gave us the time and space to spend time with him. It was February 2020 when he was born and died. So right at the beginning of a global pandemic. So the world really shifted in terms of what we felt that we could do. My husband felt very strongly that he did not want to have a funeral. He felt that he wanted to celebrate our son's life, and he didn't want people, the word he actually used was pity. He did not want to feel pity from people about our son. He wanted to celebrate him and have a good experience in his death and really bring meaning. And we had been planning to do this walk for Mended Little Hearts of Central Virginia in April. And so what we decided to do was a couple things. We did a t-shirt campaign on Bonfire to raise funds for the Children's Hospital where he was staying in. And we raised about $20,000 through our t-shirt campaign to donate to the Children's Hospital. And at the Children's Hospital, we're actually going to be having a playroom in a new hospital, the new tower of the hospital that they're building that'll come in 2023 that will be named after him. So it'll be Jasper's Playroom. And with Mended Little Hearts, we raised another $20,000 to donate to Mended Little Hearts of Central Virginia for the walk. And the walk did not happen. It was virtual. So it was a virtual walk. So it was a little bit different than being able to get together in person. But a lot of our friends and family still walked and sent us pictures. And we walked with very close friends of ours. And they had a really great online ceremony that honored him because we were the #1 fundraisers for the walk. So he got a lot of airtime and attention, which was really awesome. The hospital also did a memorial service. They do 2 memorial services a year virtually. So we participated in that. So I feel like a lot of our grief experience has been, in the midst of a global pandemic. And in some ways, I feel like our experience of grief was also while everybody else in the world was grieving. And in some ways, I do feel sometimes that we got lost in the shuffle in just in terms of like some of the supports and stuff like that usually happen. And I know a lot of people have experienced that in this pandemic too. But it was just a very different experience. We didn't have a funeral, but just I've been finding different ways over the last 20 months to honor him and to bring awareness to congenital heart defects and stuff like that.
I love the idea of Jasper's Playroom. That's going to be so amazing.
Yeah.
Yes, that's so awesome. I'm so happy that you all are continuing to really put the information out there about congenital heart defects and really advocating for your son and keeping your son's memory alive by doing all the work that you're doing. So it's so commendable and I absolutely love it. Definitely something to continue to support. So how can, for folks who are listening or watching, how can they contribute to Jasper's Playroom?
Oh, that's so kind. So his playroom will be at the Children's Hospital of Richmond. So they have the website for the fundraising. So if you go to their website, Children's Hospital of Richmond, and donate, you can add in the note Jasper's Playroom.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So it's been, a full year since all of this, a little bit, almost going on 2 years since you've gone through this such traumatic experience. How do you feel like you've gone through your own grief journey? How have you used any other tools? Obviously you listen to the podcast, but, have you listened to, read books or listen to other podcasts, participated in like group therapy or with a therapist? Tell us, how have you, what is your modality for going through grief and healing?
Yeah. For me, like, I jumped headfirst into grief. I've become a student of grief, and it's just kind of been my way of um, searching for understanding, I guess, in things that I know that I will not find understanding for in books or in this life, really. But just searching and just being on that journey of embracing grief, because I think grief very much is it it's me loving my son. Grief is also me living my life fully. And grief is living. I believe that grief is something to be experienced. It is very much part of the fullness of experiencing life and also living life whole. And since my son died, very much has been important to me to live my life whole, because, you know, again, it's just the way that I live for him and live with him and continue his memory. And in child loss, I have felt very much that I have unlearned a lot of the lessons that I learned in infertility and endometriosis. I speak my truth. I am loud. I'm very vocal about my grief. And I think in some ways, for people that had seen me silent for so long, some people don't necessarily understand it. Some people don't necessarily appreciate it. But I'm living for me. I'm living to honor myself. I'm living to honor my son and my husband and our experience. And, really that's the most important thing. And this is me. I'm a griever. And, that's a big part of who I am. And I think that's very much a part of, living a wholeness of life. Like I said, I read a lot. One of the first books that I read in grief was "It's Okay That You're Not Okay" by Megan Devine. And from there, I found her writing group. She does an online 30-day grief writing group, Writing Your Grief. And I did that in March of 2020. And that was such a powerful experience for me. Like, writing has always been an important outlet. Even as I didn't verbalize things that I was feeling in endometriosis and infertility, I would write a lot and journal, and I kept a blog. And, having that experience to share my writing with other grievers and have people mirror my words back to me and also mirror my feelings back to me and say, yes, that's true. I see that. I believe that. It's real. It's valid. Was such a powerful experience going through that course. In that course, I also met the person that I believe that Jasper sent for me to be my companion in grief. And that was, there was another bereaved mother in the group. Her name is Samantha, and her son Reed died in December of 2019. And, the experience of meeting her and journeying through those 30 days in the writing group was just so powerful. And we've become friends since. And we very much believe that Reed and Jasper are responsible for connecting us, and that they are best friends and they, wherever they are, and they wanted us to have each other here. And really from that experience, it was really very much about learning about the importance of grief community and friendship in grief, and also the mutual sharing of pain. It's in a way that where, you have the 1+1 of grief, and somehow you lift each other together, and it's lighter than two. With that coming together and that sharing of pain. And I very much felt that in that group. I've also read another book that's been really powerful, Shelby Forsathia's Permission to Grieve. And it's very much about, just owning that grief and how much grief is a part of life. And I've also done her online course, Life After Loss Academy. I have a local grief counselor that I've been seeing for the last 20 months, and she's been a huge supporter. The shirt that I'm wearing, it's from Hayden's House of Healing, and they host grief retreats. They're in New Jersey, and I attended a weekend grief retreat for bereaved parents, and it was just such an experience of openness. Like, I walked through the doors of that house, and the tears just started coming down my face. So I just had this release by entering that space and just having that weekend with other grieving parents, and talking about our children, finding different outlets for our grief through crafts and community. So just a lot of different things, have really been, just trying to tap into as many resources as possible. Another thing that I really enjoy doing, the Lucky Anchor Project, they have a monthly online meetup group for bereaved parents. And that's been a huge source of community. So it's really been just having those opportunities. And it's just kind of crazy how the online community from infertility to grief is just so amazing and welcoming in a way that sometimes real life, in air quotes, is not. You go to the internet and you just find people who have the same experiences and say, yes, I see you and it's real. And that's just been so impactful for me, like just finding community.
Yes, I love that. And you share so many different examples and books. I think that it will definitely be beneficial for those people to definitely go back and visit those resources. I'll make sure I link them all in our
Awesome.
show notes and in the description box because I think they're great resources to find community and find your people. I think that
Mhm.
everybody has a different way or may need different things as they navigate their journey. So I'm thankful for you for going on and doing that research to find
Exactly.
your place and find
Exactly. And
your
just like
community.
trying different things. Exactly. Like,
Absolutely.
one thing may not work for you. And I'm just like, just opening myself wholly and fully to any experience to commune and share. And sometimes, like, you're sharing with somebody or you're sharing something and you're being open and it takes a lot out of you. Like, sometimes I'm just so tired and sometimes I feel like in the sharing, like I'm breaking myself apart into those layers and into those pieces, and then rebuilding in a way that, that honors me, honors my experience, and also makes me feel more whole than I've ever felt before in this person that I am, because I'm acknowledging those broken places, but also feeling more whole and filling in them in a way that I didn't before when I allowed myself to be silent.
Absolutely. I love that. I absolutely love that. So I would love for you to leave our listeners with some encouraging words. Those who may be navigating through their own grief journey, may be going through IVF cycle right now, and those who may just be thinking about what the next steps are as they think about expanding their family and becoming mothers and parents. So, what encouraging words can you leave with our listeners?
Yeah, I'm probably not the best person for encouragement, Erica. One of the things that that I will say though, because I don't very much, I don't believe, in words like "don't give up, everything will be okay," because that's just not facts. And sometimes, what the best thing for you to do is to give up, and it's not, and in that way, it's not giving up. It's actually listening to yourself and having that knowing of when you've reached that point where it's time to take another course and to do something different, and that is okay. And just a terminology of "don't give up" just kind of makes you feel like, okay, well, if I've had enough, if I've come to the end of my road, that somehow that's not okay. And sometimes it is. So I just hope people, and I wish for people to find those places and find those people where you can be honest about what it is that you're feeling and what it is that you need in your life and what it is that you need next and what that right thing is for you next. And if you feel that that next thing is for you, the right thing for you is another cycle to keep going, to keep trying, then I wish you all the love and all the best wishes in the world. And if not, then I just wish you happiness in whatever that journey may be, because this is hard stuff, and everything that you're feeling, everything that you're feeling is right, it's true, it's real. And I guess the last thing that I would say is I believe you, because that's something that I very much have wanted to hear in a lot of different experience, just to feel believed in whatever it is, that decision that you're making.
Perfect. No, I think that was perfect. As much as you're like, I don't think I can leave encouraging words. No, that was perfect. Perfect to sum it up. So where can we connect with you after this episode goes live? Give me all your
Oh.
social media where we can look for you.
So I am on social media on Instagram. I'm on Instagram at a legacy for Jasper, and that's a legacy for Jasper. I'm also, and I didn't tell you, I'm also working on a book. It's actually coming in February 2022. So my book will be available on my Instagram page, on Amazon, and other places where you get books. And what it is, it's a gift book. It's a companion book for bereaved parents, and it's really, it's a story, and it's the story of an experience through motherhood, through child loss, through connecting with children who have passed away, through a story of friendship, and it's really just something tangible for bereaved parents to hold and to have. And my goal with the book is to donate all profits to institutions supporting medically fragile children and bereaved parents. So like Mended Little Hearts, like the Children's Hospital of Virginia and Hayden's House. So both books and proceeds, I plan to donate all of those. And, just to reach as many bereaved parents as possible. So, maybe Erica, like when it comes out, I could maybe something with you where I can kind of give you books so that you can share with your listeners and the community that you have built.
Absolutely. So excited about that. And we definitely will keep in touch when that book definitely goes live so we can promote it and people can get it into their hands. So thank you so much for being on the podcast and sharing your story with us. I know that everyone listening who has gone on this journey definitely can get something from each of the things that you dropped in this episode. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. It was really great to talk to you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. For show notes, go to sistersinloss.com. To stay connected with us and join the Sisters in Loss community and receive my weekly newsletter, please go to sistersinloss.com/newsletter. That is sistersinloss.com/newsletter. Please rate and review this episode, and I will talk to you next week.
I'm sensing plumbing problems. Worry not. With American Home Shield, you can now video chat with live repair experts for help with home fixes over the phone. Talk to a real human expert over video chat who can help get that home system or appliance back on track. Sounds like peace of mind. American Home Shield. Don't worry, be warranty. Visit ahs.com/listen for 20% off any plan.
Video chat feature available as benefit to AHS members with select plans. See ahs.com for hours and details.